Grandfather Horacio, at the time he acquired this in an auction. His vision was how to buy land in high mountain areas, especially where water was born. And he used to talk to us or emphasize that these places were not valued at the time, but that in the future the water would be like a kind of gold. So grandfather always told us that for him the experiences of living in the countryside, of feeling the land, were more rooted in the nature that his family, his ancestors, taught him, and for us in what my grandmother, my mother, and my cousins were encouraging us to do. The family legacy has been in the conservation process, in seeing the process not only as an agricultural and livestock farm, but to give it a plus, and that is where we began to cover or broaden that spectrum to see what other options there are in the institutions. And that is where we began to link with the green business of how that spectrum can contribute much more to an ecosystem so rich and so sensitive, more ecosystem, because that is where we work. We work in the Los Agüeros Reserve, which covers 1,910 hectares, but which in turn is also so strategic that it provides 70% of the water to Duitama, and what we are doing now is strongly focused on this tradition. Conservation, research and education, through economic models of productive reconversion. Managing beekeeping as a pillar in ecological restoration with high mountain food. Since 6 or 7 years ago, we opened a company or a corporation, the Paipa Corporation. It is the direct link to make the institutional processes. It is like making an alliance with the UPTC, with the University of Tolima, with the government, with the corporations, with research institutes like the Humboldt. We have also talked with people from Sinchi. We have also been with institutions in the environmental education part, like Maloka, like the Goethe Institute, who have come to make participatory education processes with communities and children from Bogotá. I insist so that people can know where the water comes from and why the Páramo ecosystem is so strategic and why we should take care of it and value it. Basically, there is a lack of information in Colombia. We really do not know much about what we have, nor where it is located, so making these inventories, these characteristics allow us to make decisions about which places are important for conservation. In addition to this information we collect, we have a biological collection that makes a kind of reserve of diversity information, and all this, as we mentioned, allows us to know or make decisions regarding conservation issues and environmental policies. This zone belongs to the Páramo zone at about 3,200 meters above sea level, but the reserve reaches almost 4,000 meters above sea level. We found a wide diversity of vegetation, where we highlight the presence of a native species of frailgen called Espalicia pliocasia, a native species, and we only have records of it in the reserve. A native species, and we have records only here in Duitama so far. Regarding insects associated with vegetation, we found 4 species of native bees mainly, in addition to the species used in beekeeping, which is the Apis mellifera. The 4 species are very important because they have different shapes, structures, and allow pollinating other places and other plants different from those that pollinate the Apis mellifera. These 4 species are, one that is called Bombus rubicundus, Bombus hortulanus, which are 2 species of large bumblebees, and 2 other species of the Mellididae family. It is one of those solitary natives, but so far because we are in the process of identification, so we do not know the species for now. It is something that we will do later. Also in these areas there is a high diversity of birds, mainly hummingbirds that are very good pollinators of the plants that we find here, and for the moment that is what we have characterized. Let's keep in mind that we are more or less in the middle phase of the project, so until now we are collecting samples, collecting information to later characterize all of this at the university. Those experiences or what we show to the people is with the intention that they learn to value what is an encenillo, what is a frailjon, what is an agraz, all this type of biodiversity, because we also compose and introduce a lot to the pollinators. We make a context of biodiversity and we focus it in an academic role, where the community that is in the city can learn in a graphic and experiential way what is the territory of the Paramo zone, why the Paramo is a living sponge and in which it gradually systematically releases water, and why we also link the bees in the food chain, who are the guardians and protectors of food, and why by planting and restoring all these ecosystems we are guardians of the water, and why with all these strategies we can give them different management. So that a territory like the reserve is like a living research area, but at the same time also experiential, and that everyone feels connected and takes a little piece of it with them. With what strategies? Selling them the honey because we sell a very high quality honey. Selling them the pollen with the physical and chemical properties of the environment. Selling them water, also giving them those processes of the plants where they come to sow life. The plan is called, Come and Sow Life, and the people come. They take a frailjon, they plant it, or they come and take an oak tree. They plant it and they have it sponsored for different years or times, and we tell the people how their plants are, then all these contexts, and all these topics that we are linking in the part of culture, theater, academy. This generates a very strong and great expectation, especially for the children. It is like the objective that we have wanted to take, so that all this part of environmental education is participative and community-based. At least in the participation of a very nice project which is the Captadores de Niebla, the community worked with us. The project consisted in the development of taking care of the Captadores de Niebla. Going to ride them because the structures are big. It was work that was done on horseback, so the community met, they rented the horses, the same with the academic community. Then all the research groups that participated and the boys that also worked on the development of this project, also the surrounding villages, because this was a project more like water conservation and it was very focused on the aqueducts of the villages, where several meetings were held with the aqueducts of the villages here in Duitama, to explain and teach them the methodology so that later on this could be spread in the near future. We had two other cool projects of propagation and multiplication of water as a native in situ economic model, so that the communities that live here begin to domesticate the agraz, which is a very valuable product abroad and also here, which can be worked very well. The other one is that of native plants, then to start developing in the high mountain nurseries working on the propagation and multiplication of encenillo, agraz, frailjones above all, is like the objective. And now the last one we have been working on is that of beekeeping. We are working on the beekeeping model to obtain honey, pollen and propolis, but additionally already in a part of mass production. The models of the boxes, with what? Avoiding deforestation, which is the felling of wood to create the hives, we are doing it through the collection and capture of plastic garbage, giving them a new management. Those are like the pillars, the 4 or 5 strong projects at this moment. Formerly we were working with the Humboldt Institute already as green business guiding and being in a certain way that can be called training, where they began to model and guide us in the sustainable community part. Also participating in processes with the RAPE, with the central region. We also work with a project called Paramos, which is also current, which is with the United Kingdom, and where we are looking at the fixation of CO2 in Paramo zones, and the same for water catchment, which is where water harvesting is going. And so far we are working on that gear, and we continue because our goal is to continue proposing productive reconversion models for the páramo zones. Well, now the relationship that we have with the research of the flora of the ecosystem, in front of the floral calendars, is precisely to see this process of internal thermoregulation and the research that is being done with the sensors that we are working on these ecological hives. Then in the upper part, we have a solar panel where they are connected with these types of sensors and USB. These sensors are also placed inside the hives. I am going to show you now, the same in the lower part. There is a weight scale. What for? To know how much weight the hive has in the honey harvesting processes, in the pollen harvesting processes, and in the internal thermoregulation. Now we are about to open the hive of the experiment. We start to open the hive. Then that one that we are removing now is the roof. Then there is an internal roof that is also made with plastic wood. Then there is a half rise, because let's say that the internal development is very good, and what we want to show is how the colony or the bee operates. This, for example, is pure moorland honey. It is ready to be harvested, ready to be consumed at home. So one of these pictures is very possibly going to be the one that we are going to take for dessert. And as we see each one of these, if we can see, they are all post-harvest. They are all post-harvest. You can recognize it because when a hive is just about to start working in this space, if you notice that these operculums have no honey, but when they close with this little wax plate, they are indicating that they are ready to take it to the plant, take it to the equipment and start the process of extracting honey. So this is harvesting. On the one hand, the corporation approached the UPTC. They have several apiaries here in Boyacá. And they told us about a problem they had, and it was that for the hives that they use for the production of honey and pollen, it happens that they need large amounts of wood which come out of the trees. Likewise, there were other design and ergonomic problems that were required to be able to generate a new hive. In this case they approached the university, and we had already had a trajectory in the part of polymeric materials, also biodegradable materials, and then we joined together and carried out a project for Minsciences, in order to generate a new hive that could suffer the deficiencies that they have and also generate a new development. Generally, since what is used is vegetable wood, that wood practically has to be changed every 5 years, and that is a cost for the beekeeper. So we have been working on the subject of polymeric materials, which have an advantage, and that is that they take quite a long time to degrade. So we proposed for this project a composite material that unites polymeric industrial waste such as polyethylene and polypropylene mixed with waste that is generated in plantations such as fibers, rice husks, coffee husks, etc. This is to be able to generate the composite material. With this we also help this circular economy. So the research began 6 months ago, and we have been testing different types of fibers, also different types of polymers. And let's say that our research has been opting for polyethylene and has also been opting for banana fibers, sugar cane fibers. That is what we are doing in our research. looking not only for mechanical resistance but also for thermal insulation. The current or conventional beehives, which are made of wood material, weigh about 24 kilograms, free of weight, free of honey production, when the complete or semi-complete load of the beehive can reach up to 40-45 kilograms. That at ergonomic level plus postures in paramo terrain, causes ergonomic risks to be generated in beekeepers that generate musculoskeletal problems, especially lumbar and at the level of the joints of the upper extremities. Then the design that we are working on, which is also focused on reducing the beehive weights, causes those excess weight overload to be reduced and compensated from the ergonomic point of view of the beehive. As for the instrumentation, what we handle is that currently, the process of inspection and handling the beehive to see the production that is carried is done in situ in ice field, and the beekeeper has to handle each of the parts of the beehive, and in this process there are two risks. One, the ergonomic, and two, the death by crushing and by bite of the hives. Then what we have done in this design, what we are proposing is to implement the beehive in such a way that the beekeeper remotely in the field can thermally measure the beehive internally, the regulation part and the production part, without having to directly affect the hive ecosystem. That is the other point we are working on, and at the material level to ensure thermal insulation. What we're looking at are composite materials that lower the thermal conductivity, and that makes the thermal comfort of 36 degrees more or less of those of bees internally, guaranteed even when we're in low environments or temperatures. Well, from the ergonomic point of view, several of the things that are being improved in our design are the part of the grips. Because if you look, here on this part of the grips on the part on the wood, the sizes in the conventional models are very small, and if we realize the work of the beekeeper has a clothing that makes the grip very limited and that generates over efforts in such a way that they have almost not used them, and what they do is manipulated in another way. The other is that the conventional beehives have the feeding system of the bees inside the hive, which happens that the beekeepers put their feeding of the bees, and then to do it again the new feeding have to uncover the hive. There's bee death, and they have to see if they have food or they have to feed them again. What is being done is an external feed design, so that the beekeeper does not have to intervene in the inner part of the hive, and through visual inspection, and through instrumentation, can sit how much feed each of the hives has. The other thing at ergonomic level is that the hives are not, let's say, installed on floor, but have a base of support. An important point that we are working on a modular system that adapts to the height of beekeepers in such a way that it handles the ergonomic height and positioning ranges. In this way we are intervening with an optimal improvement of the beekeeping chain and the activity of beekeepers. Well, as I tell you, it is part of a paramo ecosystem. An Andean forest, high Andean, have different functions or ecosystem services also: carbon dioxide capture, water production, the fact of maintaining or being reservoirs of a high source of biodiversity is very important. Therefore, I believe that from these factors, it is important to conserve them. Because what I say, not only do they support a high amount of biodiversity, but they also provide our ecosystem services, such as very important. Well, we from here from Elixir del Paramo of the Reserve Paramo Los Agueros, we invite the producers to those entrepreneurs and those entrepreneurs who are emerging now. there are many alternatives in the processes where they can be linked, and there are several calls that Corpo Boyacá is opening, where if you see that your work generates a positive impact, whether social, community, or directly to the environment, with these three components can enter one of the registers of indicators that the Ministry of Environment has, where the corporation is in charge of guiding us as entrepreneurs so that we start to scale and improve our production aspect, and have that seal of guarantee, which is the This Green Seal or Be a Green Seal business, where there is a process a little more confidence when the consumer is going to have like that relationship of getting their product. Then that green business seal to us has opened a lot of doors in both domestic and international market. And I invite colleagues who are in that process to look well for those indicators. If they do not know, call us. That we also as green businesses have the information, or we have the direct contact from here of our region of Boyacá. Well, that you can also be part of this team, because what we want to be is more green businesses within Boyacá to protect our ecosystem.